The executioner will get his hands on me, and I won't resign. And I won't resign.
Hello, everybody. It is time for Uncontrolled Opposition, and I am your engineer and producer of the show, Jamie Cheese Slice. Today, we are going to be talking about false flags and the USS Liberty, and we have guests from that event, Phil Tourney and Wayne Stiles. They will be talking about their experiences with that event. And if you don't know what the USS Liberty is, my dad doesn't know, and he was around for it, and I told him we were having these guests today. He just said, I've never heard of this before, and that's why I think this is one of the more important shows we're doing, so more people can learn about it. But this event was an attack on one of the United States ship by our ally Israel, and it was supposed to be used as a false flag to get us involved in the 6-Day War back in 1967. So I was trying to explain that to my dad. He'd never heard of it before, and that's why I'm hoping that they're actually watching this right now. And if they don't watch it now, I'll make them watch it later. But it's very, very important that more and more Americans know about it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and I want to let you know, if this is the first time you've ever watched this show on YouTube, what is very important to know that this is a radio show first and foremost. We are on WBAI in New York, and we're also on the Progressive Radio Network. But we have to record it, so we just record it here live for you to see on YouTube, and you get to see all of the uncut stuff that doesn't make it onto the to the radio program, because after we do this, I cut it down to fit properly for that format. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring on our hosts, Gloria and Jeremy. So Jeremy is not here for some reason, but we've got Gloria. Jeremy is here, but he stepped away.
Hey, Jamie.
Here he is. Hey, Gloria. So you guys excited about today?
Hey, Jeremy. Oh yeah, this is a big show. Oh my God, we are so honored and privileged to have these gentlemen here.
The more people hear about the story, the better. So let's go ahead and bring on our guests and let them talk to you guys for a brief second. So hey guys, welcome. It's an honor to speak with you.
Welcome to the show.
So good morning. My pleasure to be here.
All right. Are you guys ready to do this? I'm going to hand it off to Gloria. She's going to do her monologue, and then we're going to bring you guys onto the stage, and we're going to talk about the incident. So we're going to record for about 55 minutes, and at the very end, I'm going to flash the card, this one right here, and that's going to mean we are done recording, but we're still going to be live on YouTube after that. And then at that point, I'll jump back on, and then we'll close out the show for the YouTube audience.
Now sometimes a point may be very important that's said after the recording, and Jamie will take that and put it into the podcast. So, if we miss something, there's always an opportunity after we finish for you to flag it, and we'll put it in.
All right. So everybody ready? I'm going to hand it off to Gloria, and she's going to start running with it. So let's do it.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Uncontrolled Opposition, where together we battle mind wars with truth strikes. I'm Gloria Guillo, an investigative journalist, and I'm here with my co-host, Professor Jeremy Kuzmarov, managing editor of Covert Action magazine. Our producer and engineer is Jamie Cheese Slice. The opinions you hear are ours and that of our guests, not those of WBAI or the Pacifica Foundation. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as professional or legal advice. Listeners are encouraged to form their own opinions. Today, we have two very special guests, Phil Tourney, a survivor of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, and Wayne Stiles, a rescue pilot assigned to evacuate crew members from the ship. Folks, this is living history before you, with implications not only for today, but also tomorrow. Know that oligarchs will stop at nothing to achieve geopolitical and material goals. False flag military operations to justify war are nothing new, just another tool in the toolbox. In this case, the false flag setup was to blame Egypt for the USS Liberty's blitzkrieg and then retaliate with nuclear weapons. Before prepping for the show, I didn't realize how close the US was to starting a nuclear war by bombing Cairo. Really, they have one playbook. Pearl Harbor equals Hiroshima and Nagasaki. USS Liberty equals a nuclear attack on Egypt. Will some false flag event blaming Iran justify a nuclear retaliation? Back to the USS Liberty. On June 8, 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel attacked the USS Liberty, a U.S. Navy intelligence ship in international waters off the Sinai Peninsula. The assault killed 34 crew members and wounded 171 more, a staggering casualty rate of over 70% on a virtually unarmed vessel. Israel apologized, claiming mistaken identity. They thought the Liberty was an Egyptian vessel. Yet survivors and critics have long challenged this. In a recent House floor speech on the 59th anniversary, Representative Thomas Massey highlighted survivor testimonies and called for a new congressional investigation. He noted the ship's clear American markings and flag, repeated Israeli reconnaissance overflights, the machine gunning of life rafts and firebombing of the deck, and what he described as an intent to leave no survivors. Also spotlighted was the delayed U.S. response. American rescue aircraft from carriers like the USS Saratoga and America were launched but recalled, reportedly on orders from Washington. This delay, combined with alleged threats to survivors to stay silent unmistakably, indicates that key players did not want witnesses or real-time intelligence emerging from the scene. One motive was also to silence U.S. monitoring of Israeli expansionist operations, such as land grabs involving the Golan Heights, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the West Bank. And it seems this was done to turn Arab states away from Russia. In the Liberty's case, the attack and the stand down of rescue forces suggest those in power on both Israeli and U.S. sides prioritize geopolitical and self-serving financial rewards over American lives and the truth. Let's understand the false flag playbook so we can spot them and call them out. Maybe we will be lucky and prevent a nuclear war on Iran. Thank you. Gentlemen, welcome to our show. It's an honor and a privilege to have you both here with us. Phil, let's hear what happened on June 8th, 1967. You are a survivor of the USS Liberty attack and a U.S. Navy veteran. Before you start, let's just take a moment to plug your excellent book, which everyone should get a copy of, Stay Afloat, From That Day to Today, because the whole point of this was just keeping the boat afloat, and they did it. They did it. Then we will hear from Navy veteran and rescue pilot Wayne Stiles, what he experienced the next day when they were cleared to evacuate wounded crew members. Lastly, Jeremy, our resident professor and historian, wrote a great article on the USS Liberty that we will also discuss and put in our show's notes. Please, Phil, take it away. What happened?
Well, thank you, Gloria. And it's nice to be here. It really is, to get the public and everybody aware of what really happened that day. And, I'm not going to go through everything, but, I'd be here for a long time. But I will say this attack just didn't happen overnight. This is planned probably a year in advance to make this happen. You just don't strafe and bomb and torpedo an American spy ship in international waters on a whim. This is all planned out by LBJ and Levy Eskel. Levy Eskel was the prime minister Israel at the time, and of course LBJ, the snake of all snakes in American history. It was unfortunately became president of the United States when JFK was assassinated by Israel. That's my belief, and I'll believe it till I'm dead and gone. We were in the Mediterranean. We got there on the 7th of June, a very clear day. I mean, it was just like glass. The water was like glass. The wind was blowing. We had like 12 knots going over the deck. The American flag was always flying. In fact, we put up a new American flag just to make sure everybody could understand we were American and friendly. We requested 2 destroyer escorts to come and be with us because we're all alone going into a war zone. We were denied not once but twice by the Pentagon, saying we don't need any destroyer escorts or anybody else to help you. Your banner is your American flag. So don't worry about it. If anything happens, we'll be there in a heartbeat. They overflew us that morning with conventional planes, the DC-3, a flying boxcar, Nor Atlas, and smaller airplanes like a Cessna. It could have been a 210, 182 or whatever. They were clearly marked with Star of David. This is on the 7th. They waved their wings, and we waved at them. We could see the pilots and the Star of David on their airplanes. And we felt great because our best friends were there. You know, everybody aboard that ship was pulling for Israel to get this over with and done quickly. And the very next day, on the 8th, the same thing happened. And they overflew us. Same thing as last time. They were taking pictures. The bomb bay doors were open. You could see the cameramen. They'd wave. We'd wave back. The pilots would wave. We could see them in the cockpits waving at us. So, I mean, come on. We felt like we're in a perfect position. And all of a sudden, at 2 o'clock, the attack began with unmarked jet aircraft, Mystere and Mirage jets. They took out every tuning antenna on that ship within 3 seconds. Our 450 caliber machine guns were taken out. By the way, they were used for repel boarders only. I mean, they're worthless against, of course, jet airplanes. But they were gone anyway. They dropped napalm on the ship. This continued for about 25 minutes. I mean, the whole ship was Swiss cheese on fire with men on the deck. I mean, they were blown up. There were pieces of them. 2 friends of mine in the forward gun mount that I just left on the starboard side, David, Skolak, and Thompson, were in the gun tub. I was just there because the sound-powered phones weren't working. And I had Skolak go up there and see what he could do. And we shot the breeze for a few minutes. I saw the old man on the bridge, and I said, well, he didn't put around with any lollygag, and you better be working or at your duty station. So I left, and 30 seconds after that, those 2 men were turned into vaporized meat and bone. It was like that all over the ship. The attack lasted 25 minutes. We thought it was over. And no, it wasn't over. And by the way, LBJ recalled the jet aircraft from USS America and USS Saratoga, tell them to return to base. Now, how did LBJ know who was attacking us if we didn't? Because he said, I will not embarrass my ally over a few dead sailors. Now, this is before the torpedo boats got there. Then we saw the torpedo boats. This is about 10 minutes after the attack started or ended, the air attack. And we saw the Star of David, and we thought, oh, great, here are our best friends in the whole wide world. They're coming here to help us. No, they weren't coming there to help us. They were coming there to sink us. The torpedo attack lasted approximately an hour and a half more after the 25 or 30 minute barrage we got from Israel's jets. Remember, we're still on fire. Napalm's a very nasty weapon to use anywhere, especially at sea. But they dropped napalm on the bridge of the ship, and that was very difficult to handle. In fact, I was trying to put it out on the bridge, and I couldn't do it with CO2, and we had no firefighting hoses. They were all shot up. We were just in bad straits. The torpedo boats fired five torpedoes at us. Think about it, 5 torpedoes. I saw 2 of them go aft. I don't know where the other 2 went, but I know where one went. It hit in the National Security Agency spaces where all the spies were. 25 beautiful young Americans doing their duty for their country had just been blown to bits by an Israeli torpedo. This continued on, and they were strafing the ship, and cannons were going off the torpedo boats. The old man was prepared to abandon ship. So we put over our last 3 life rafts. We only had 3 left out of a crew of 294 souls. 3 life rafts were left. They shot them out of the water. We were going to anticipation of putting our most seriously wounded in them so they'd have a chance at life. But the Israeli savages, the murderers, didn't want that. They shot them out of the water. No survivors would be taken. None. And then they finally quit after 2 hours, and we thought the attack was over. But no, it wasn't over then either. They sent troop-carrying helicopters over to finish us off. They hovered for 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then they just left. You could see the Marines with their feet on the skits ready to board our ship, either by ladder or rope. I don't know how they had done it, but they were going to scuttle the ship and kill us all. So by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, with his hand, he kept us alive. I'm 80 years old now. I've been telling this story for the last 43 years about what they've done to us. And the Congress, they say the Congress has investigated it. They're a bunch of liars. They've never investigated the USS Liberty, not one time. There's never been one survivor at Capitol Hill telling our story, not one. They've already said they've had 5 or 6. They've never had any. They're a bunch of liars. They're a bunch of APAC whores. That's what they are, all of them. In 67, all the way up to today. Thomas Massey is an American hero. He had us in his office and in the gallery when he shouted to the world about the USS Liberty. This is the most traction we've had ever since Sacrificing Liberty, which Wayne Stiles was in. And it's nice to see you again, Wayne.
Same here.
Yeah, that's kind of the story. When we got all the guys off, the most seriously wounded to the USS America, we went back out to sea. They sent us to Malta. 2 days out at sea, Admiral Isaac Kidd and Ward Boston boarded our ship to interrogate us. What happened? Why did it happen? I was in sick bay with 4 or 5 other guys. Admiral Kidd came in there with Ward Boston. He took off he's a flag admiral. He's a big shot. He took off his stars and threw them on the table, stainless steel, and rang out like a bell. I'll never forget it. And everybody started telling their story. And I was in damage control. I was all over that ship. I saw a lot. And he got to me, and I felt like something was going to happen. At least the truth was going to be told. And we told him everything we saw. The life rafts being shot. Our 2 American flags were shot down, and we put up another flag, 7x13 holiday colors. And they said they couldn't see the flags. We went through that, and again, I told him everything I could. I'm a 20-year-old guy. When an flag officer takes these stars off and say, tell me, and I'll take care of you. Then he puts his stars back on. Says, now I'm an admiral again. I'm going to tell every one of you SOBs, if you ever repeat anything you just told me, I'll make sure you end up in prison or worse. And he got right in front of my face, beat red, and says, you know what worse means, sailor? I said, yes, sir, I do. And he left. So that's the way they treated us. They let Israel try to murder us all in cahoots with the United States to bring us into World War III, and that was the plan. There was SAC aircraft on the way to Cairo even before our ship got hit. Think about that. How devious, crooked LBJ, McNamara, and his underlings were to try to pull this off. And they would have pulled it off if we sank. But like I say, by the grace of God, we didn't. So we headed into Malta. That's where they repaired the ship. We wanted to take it back battle scarred, fix the torpedo hole, and leave the rest of the ship the way they left it for us, so the world could see it. The people at home could see it. But no, they made the ship look like brand new and sent us on our way. And they've been covering up ever since.
Could you explain? You said that SAG planes were leaving. Could you explain that before the ship was hit?
Well, yeah, SAC is, of course, that's in Nebraska. So they were leaving out of Nebraska before we got hit, and that's a long ways over there.
But what does SAC mean for our audience?
Strategic Air Command. That B-52 that just crashed here a few days ago? That's SAC right there. That's exactly what it is. They're on the ready 24/7, 365 days a year. All of them are, SAC is.
And what do they carry?
They carry nuclear weapons. That's what they're designed for. Not only that, off the USS, I believe it was the America, sent 4 aircraft off. Now, I was told this secondhand by Mo Schaefer, because he talked to Admiral Geis and Martin, and he did confirm there were aircraft in the air ready to go get Cairo. So I believe him, and I believe those admirals. And I might say our most greatest admiral that has supported us until he passed on was Admiral Thomas Moore. He was in charge of the Atlantic Fleet and the Pacific Fleet, not at the same time. And then he became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff until his dying breath. He says he'll never believe it was a mistaken identity. It was a pre-planned attack. And in the Moore report, he does that very eloquently with a bunch of other admirals and generals and even Medal of Honor recipients contributing to the Moore report. But like I said, we've been doing this for so long. Personally, myself, 43 years straight. It's been my whole life. When you see your shipmates get slaughtered, young men, and it could have been me just as easy as any of them, you can't forget them. I mean, their lives meant something. They still mean something. And that's why I keep on doing it. I got their names right here, all 34 of them. They lived in my heart. Now they're living outside of me. And they always have. To let people know that Israel is no friend of ours. In fact, our own government is no friend of ours. They're a bunch of bought and paid for whores, like I said, of AIPAC then and now. And I think I've used my 15 minutes of fame up.
Well, we're going to come back to you, and so thank you for sharing that with us. I just want to say, it's a very touching story on how you kept the boat afloat, and I hope you'll talk a little bit about that after we give Phil a chance. The other thing I'd just like to say is both my sons were on an aircraft carrier during the Afghanistan and Iraq operations, and one of my sons, my eldest son, was a deck seaman. So hearing our devoted military just being gunned down and napalmed and blown up is really, it really hits me hard. It really does. Thank you so much for your service. And thank you for the truth. And you know, you've been saying the truth for over 40 years. The issue has been you weren't given air and oxygen to get it out to the world. And it's important that we know this. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Phil, I mean, Wayne, please explain what it was like to be a rescue pilot. You had mentioned that you were allowed the next day. You weren't allowed the day of.
Well, the day of the attack, we were invited to an all squadron meeting on the America. And the officer in charge, all that I remember him saying is that one of our ships, a listening ship, had been attacked in the Eastern Mediterranean, and that the ship's company had come down and they had asked us if we could make it all the way to the Liberty, do some rescues, and come back on the afternoon of June 8th. And we did not have that kind of range with our small helicopter. So the plan was made to take off early the following morning. We had a detachment aboard the America for utility and pilot rescue. We had 3 helicopters, 10 pilots, and 30 support personnel, enlisted maintenance and air crew. So I was a co-pilot and not always privileged to be in the meetings that counted, but a lot of it did filter down through to us. And I was told to be ready at the break of dawn the following morning. So the following morning, we took off. Dave Hubbs was the command pilot. I was the co-pilot. We took off in darkness and flew. I was looking at my logbook the other day, and I think I got a total of 3.5 hours that day. So I'm guessing we flew at least 45 minutes one way to reach the ship, which in the vernacular was a mess. There was nowhere to land. Everything was shot up. We were forced to hover over the bow at about 25 feet and bring the wounded up on the hoist. Now, the hoist was on my side of the aircraft, and my job as co-pilot was to watch the flight instruments, the engine instruments, and also to monitor the hoist. We sent a crewman down to the deck of the Liberty to help put people into the horse collar, which is simply a round collar that they fit their head and arms through. We didn't have the room in the back for wounded on stretchers and such like that, but we brought up as many as we could on the hoist. Now, while we're hovering, I'm calling out the power to Dave, and I happened to glance over into that forward gun tub that Phil mentioned, and there was the blood of his shipmates sloshing back and forth on the bottom of that gun tub. They must have removed the bodies, because I was absolutely shocked to see, and there was no doubt it was blood. It was red as could be, and it was sloshing back and forth as the ship rolled. So we're bringing up wounded, and I'm calling out the power. Now, for a very quick helicopter dynamic lesson, the wings of a helicopter are the rotors. The rotors are driven by an engine. So if the engine runs out of power, the rotor can only do one thing, and that is to slow down. So we had such a load in the back that the rotors started to slow down. And the rotors got down around 92%, and we lose the tail rotor at 88. So it was kind of a dangerous situation. And I'm on my first cruise, and I'm not flying, but Dave's flying. And we had somebody halfway up on the hoist. We sent him back down. And then Dave was able, I don't know how he ever did it, but he was able to maneuver the helicopter out away from the ship. and into the relative wind. We didn't know it until we got back to our ship, the USS America, that the Liberty was in a 5-degree starboard drift. So we were being taken out of the wind. And as we stayed relative to the ship for the safety of the wounded, we were being taken away from the wind, and it was acting against us. Just like any plane has to land and take off into the wind, we have to hover into the wind. So I don't know how he did it, but he got those turns up, and we got back to the ship. And the wounded we had were taken down to the medical area of the ship. The USS America, that medical, the sick bay was just mobbed. I mean, there was wall-to-wall people on the floor and everywhere else. But I will say that when I got back to the ship, the next crew took over, and a shout out to Bob Hamill, who is another living rescue pilot for HC2. But I talked with the crewman that was on the deck, and he said that he thought that there had been 2 crews that went to man that 50 cal, and that were shot up by the attacking aircraft. Another member of the crew said that they witnessed bombs being loaded under the attack aircraft that Phil mentioned, and that they had shielded it off with almost like drapes. They had hung drapes so they could bring those bombs up, put them on the aircraft without being witnessed by too many people, which I thought was really strange that they would go to all that trouble. But there was definitely nuclear-armed attack aircraft that left the USS America that day. I can also add anecdotally that another conversation I had with one of the crewmen was after the fact was that when the pilots came back and landed, one of the pilots was so angry that when he hit the deck, he took his helmet and slammed it to the deck as hard as he could because of being called back, so they weren't able to support the Liberty. So, you know, I'm embarrassed to tell you that we went on. We went on to our mission. We went to the next day. We were launching and recovering aircraft. I flew several hops in the next few days. We went on to our next port. I didn't even know it was the Israelis that had attacked. In fact, at the time of our first meeting, they just said that the ship has been attacked, and that was it. It was only after I retired from the FBI and we were living in North Florida that a friend of mine suggested that I read Body of Secrets by James Bamford. There's 2 whole chapters on the Liberty and also mentions LBJ quite prominently. And after I read that, I realized, boy, you took part in something that was meaningful and critical to the welfare of the world and our country. And that's when I began to get more active in the USS Liberty Association, and decided that I was going to speak out at every opportunity. And that's how we've done it. We went to their 55th anniversary, and we intend to go to the 60th next year. And in the next year, I am going to be publicizing at every opportunity that this is the 60th anniversary, that there are still men that are alive. There are still men that are suffering from their wounds. There are families that are missing their family members, and I want the country to know that. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Just, how we got in touch with Wayne was he commented on an article that Jeremy had written, and he liked it. So I want to give Jeremy a chance to kind of go into the details of his article. But I do want to kind of come back to Phil to understand what he knew was being done to keep that ship afloat, because that's fascinating. We really, like the name of your book, I mean, everything is about staying afloat in life, not only in war and in tragedy. Jeremy, take it away.
It is, how we kept that old ship afloat. Now, you got to remember, it was an old World War II Victory Hull ship that had been converted into the most sophisticated spy ship in the world at that time. None better than the Liberty. But that old ship was torn up terribly when that torpedo hit and blew all those great men away, those heroes that stayed at their duty station on our way to Malta. Now, in our weight room, there was a great big, huge gash, probably about 7 feet long by 3 feet wide. And you could look down into that. That was one deck above where the torpedo hit, Gloria. You could look down in that hole and you couldn't see any ship at all. All it was just blue water. And there was 35 or 25 men in that compartment that were being smashed around in that old salt water, the dirty, I mean, the water was clean, but I mean, dirty by the fact of our shipmates being blown up in there. And we had to carry them, and you could smell the smell of death aboard that ship. But keeping it afloat was patching holes, checking the bulkheads. I might add, off the USS Davis and the USS Massey, which was, I believe it was part of the carrier group escort. Well, I think they had, I don't know how many ships. I think most of them are like 15, 16, I don't know, with that carrier group. But they did come over and help us with some damage control. They deserve a lot of credit for that. And we just worked 24/7, to make sure that we could do all we could do to keep it afloat. And we got into Malta, we put it in the dry dock, and then the gruesome task started of taking out all the dead shipmates out of there. And the CTs, the spies, were the only one that were allowed in those spaces to clean up their shipmates' body parts. I mean, they just went through complete hell, and then to make them have to do that too. I mean, what they did to the USS Liberty was probably the most rotten thing that they could ever do. Of course, we sank. It's a totally different world we live in right now, completely total, because they were going to nuke Cairo, and it's us not sinking saved millions of lives. I always believe that innocent human beings are going to be incinerated for a false flag, all for the benefit of Israel. And nothing's changed today. Everything's for the benefit of Israel. In fact, I don't know how true this is going to be with Netanyahu and Trump, but Netanyahu basically told him to go kiss his ass. He's going to do what he wants to do. The benefactor of the United States giving him all the money, the bombs to kill everybody.
Well, let's give Jeremy a chance to kind of jump in, because he has a good geopolitical overview, because we're kind of running out of time. We got 15 minutes left.
Well, yeah, and it's great
Thanks.
to be with you, Wayne and Phil. And yeah, I mean, I teach American history and also work in journalism. And I intend to write a book on false flags in American history and look at, the Lusitania. Unfortunately, the USS Liberty incident, I don't think, is unique. I mean, you can look at the sinking of the Lusitania in World War I, and often involves ships, with the Gulf of Tonkin incident and the sinking of Lusitania. Also, they're willing to sacrifice, innocent civilian lives. That was a civilian ship that was traveling through Europe. And they wanted to get the U.S. involved in World War I. And in that case, Winston Churchill withheld the rescue boats after, and it was proven that there were explosives planted on the ship. They tried to blame Germany for sinking the Lusitania ship. And there was a British parliamentary commission after the war that uncovered a lot of things. And the captain who survived said the whole matter, stinks as rotten, just like you guys are testifying about the USS Liberty. So there are unfortunately parallels in history. And I do agree with Phil that, having studied LBJ's career, that he is a snake. And I did another article that showed he was implicated in numerous murders in the state of Texas after he rigged the 1948 election. There was ballot stuffing when he was running for the U.S. Senate, and he actually lost. He wasn't that popular among voters, but he stuffed ballots in East Texas County. And to cover that up, there was a sheriff who knew about it, and he was in prison on another matter, and they had him killed in prison because he was writing letters to the governor. And the Texas governor at that time accused LBJ of being a murderer in 1948. And then you can look at his role in the Kennedy assassination. So, unfortunately, we find that in American politics, often the worst possible people come to power, and they use dirty methods to get there, and then they orchestrate these kind of incidents. And I think Wayne and Phil are obviously very well informed about the Liberty. I mean, I know it from the reading books on the topic, and I was able to interview a few other USS Liberty survivors for that article. I mean, a few major points from that article to build off what they were saying were that, yeah, there is evidence that an NSA plane was overhead, and that Cyrus Vance, who was a key figure in the cover-up, became Secretary of State later, threatened the NSA, not to divulge that the NSA was there. Because I think the point they made was very good, that this was planned long in advance, and that the U.S. was kind of overseeing this, and using. I guess the Israelis and American were working together. They each had their own interests. I think the Israelis may have participated willingly because they wanted to get the U.S. involved in the war. Because they had, and as a historian, one point I could emphasize that Nasser was viewed as a major threat. The Egyptian leader, the CIA had been involved in trying to overthrow or murder him. They had sent some of the same people that were involved in the coup in Iran in 1953 that overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh. Because Nasser was a similar. Mossadegh was the Iranian leader who wanted to nationalize Iran's oil. And the CIA mobilized a coup against him and put in the Shah, who turned over Iran to British and American oil corporations and served as kind of a proxy or neo-colony of the U.S. and Britain. And Nasser was a strong leader who wanted to assert more Arab control over the oil, be a regional strongman, and was more socialist in his leanings, and it stood up to the British, French, and Israelis in the Suez Crisis in 1956, and nationalized the Suez Canal. So the West was after him, and the U.S. wanted his removal, and they were using the Israelis to do a lot of the dirty work. And the Israelis have their own agenda. They want to forge a greater Israel and wipe out their enemies. So if they can get a stronger power, like the United States, into the war and get rid of Nasser. So I think that was their agenda in collaborating with the United States. And then, some of the details I went over in the article, things like
two things I just want to interject real quick that were very important at that time was the Suez Canal. Okay, and if Jamie puts up the map, there we go. If you take a look at this map, Jeremy, could you walk us through the map? Can you see it clearly?
Yeah, I can see it. Well, Nasser was trying to assert control over that, and that's what precipitated the Suez Crisis in the 1950s. And that actually, he dealt a hammer blow to the British Empire, which was, unable to have its will, and was kind of forced to stand down. And actually, Eisenhower had a more balanced policy toward the Israelis. He threatened sanctions on the Israelis, and that forced them to back off as well. And that was a major victory for Nasser and humiliation for Britain and European powers. So they wanted to get even with Nasser, and Nasser was standing up for the Arab world.
Excuse me. The other thing that I just want to put out there is the Aswan Dam and how critical that was. And Egypt had wanted to have NASA basically. I lost my train of thought, but the Aswan Dam, Egypt wanted to have the United States help fund it and develop it, and they refused. So he turned towards Russia. So some of this was also to kind of put a wedge between Russia and Egypt. Could you speak a little bit on that too? Thank you.
Yeah, Egypt had moved into the Eastern camp. And the U.S. had wanted to dominate the Middle East for its oil, and that was the concern that Nasser was a magnetic leader who was a hero to many in the Arab world, and he was pushing pan-Arab unity. He was not only popular in Egypt, but throughout the Arab world, and pushing for the unity of Arab states and to adopt more socialist, anti-imperialist policy and take control over their oil and align with the Soviet Union. So that was the fear of the United States, that the Soviets and Egyptians would take control over the region and its oil. And LBJ was connected with the oil mafia in Texas, so they pushed him to adopt really hardline Middle East policy. So this was his the USS Liberty, I think, attack was his way of creating a pretext, like with the Gulf of Tonkin, to escalate U.S. involvement and once and for all do in Nasser and undercut the Soviet Union and its potential influence over the Middle East. So I think the motive is pretty clear. And then the details, we've mostly gone over today. I mean, my article, is just drawn. There are some good books now written. There was a book by Peter Hunam on Operation Cyanide. And I think there are documents about this operation that was approved by the committee 303. It was a secret committee, very powerful committee with the CIA, National Security Council, that approved this operation to create a pretext for more expanded U.S. military role in the Middle East and targeting Nasser and aligning with the Israelis in the Six-Day War. And also, it should be noted, Johnson was in a lot of trouble politically because Vietnam was extremely unpopular. There was a growing anti-war movement, so he's more and more desperate. And also, if he's out of office, he did so many criminal things, including, there's strong evidence of his role in the Kennedy assassination. So it's like, we joke, about these African dictators who have to stay in power because otherwise they'll be going to prison. But it's kind of the same with LBJ. He did so many things, so many criminal things. So if he's going to lose, fall out of power, he has to worry about spending the rest of his life in jail. So he's desperate. And so a desperate man will do desperate things, including try and, plot a false flag operation. And if you look at American public opinion at that time, it was overwhelmingly supportive of Israel. I mean, things have changed, but now because of Israel's excesses and barbarism in Gaza has turned public opinion. But in the Six-Day War, polls showed that only 4% of the American public supported Egypt, whereas 96% were all behind Israel. And even all the liberal groups were supporting Israel. They saw it as heroic that Israel, this embattled democracy, and these backward Arab states attacking it. And Moshe Dayan was like a folk hero. He was promoted in all the American media as this kind of hero who was successful in counterinsurgency, where Americans were failing at that time in Vietnam. So I think Johnson read the public mood and felt that he can transition from Vietnam to a more successful war against Egypt that was popular in supporting Israel, and that would save his political life. So there's that aspect. And there's evidence of the pulling back of the submarine, the rescue planes. This Admiral Geis, I think, confronted McNamara. Has issued orders to send the planes, and then McNamara called it back, and then Johnson came on the phone and said he doesn't care if the ship sinks. So the top levels overrode Admiral Geis, who I think was trying to protect the ship. And then, I think the point was very good about the cover-up after. That's something I researched a bit, and there was a naval inquiry, but it was a complete sham. And that's a pattern we do find in American history, like with the Warren Commission. And this is what the book I want to write. We'll have a chapter on the Liberty and on the Lusitania and on Pearl Harbor, because there's all these cover-ups. And the Roberts Commission was a cover-up about Pearl Harbor. And then this commission they set up, there was one, and I think Phil made the point that there's never been an investigation. That's true. The Congress has never taken this up. I think Liberty survivors approached Bernie Sanders in 2000, and he refused to take this on. And Massey has been the only one now to publicize it. there was this one naval inquiry, but it was complete whitewash and cover up. And it just it was designed to distort what happened before the public. And there was one congressman I found in my research, the only congressman who spoke out, I think in the late 60s, was known as the most racist person in Congress. But he picked up this cause, a guy named Jim Rarick, and he actually accused the Johnson administration of a false flag operation in Congress. But a lot of people dismissed him because he had a reputation as a racist. But yeah, I think there are a few books that people can consult. Phil's book, if they're interested in more information, this book by Peter Hunam, there's a book by Joan Mellon, and also Philip Nelson. So there are some good books out there, and there's a lot of detail that made clear that this was, as Phil and Wayne were pointing out, an atrocity directed against American troops that was coordinated and planned for a long time at the highest levels of power.
Well, we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so I'd like to give our two gentlemen an opportunity to let our audience know how they can follow their work. And just a quick word, yeah, I think it's so important to have our show on this because, what we find is, we're on WBAI, which is a very progressive radio show. And it seems what we see is the audiences are kind of divided by, kind of a right and left dynamic, which is why we're Uncontrolled Opposition, is that, we will just talk about the truth. We don't say something is done by a Democrat or a Republican. I mean, in this case, clearly Johnson was a Democrat, but it's irrelevant. It's still the same oligarchy that's behind both of these parties. So what we find in the more left-wing, or progressive area is a reluctance to understand this kind of these truth things and to disregard anything that is self-reflective on the United States or Israel as being conspiracy theory and just negating it. And I have good friends that I grew up with. I grew up in an Italian Jewish neighborhood, very close to another neighborhood that they called Matzah Pizza instead of Massapequa, which is kind of funny. So, people are like, I find this story you're doing today very hard to believe. It seems implausible. So people immediately come with this, anything that questions the prevailing narrative that they've understood for their lifetime as so threatening that they won't even look at the facts. So I think it's very important for the, liberal left wing or, Democrat groups to focus on this because usually the right wing is very focused on truther things and is very concerned with the matters that our government gets into. And, I think issues like this, that involve our military and like this, that, our military was killed by our government. This crosses any line. This is the oligarchy. It doesn't matter what party they're from. It is the oligarchy. So let Phil, let's talk about your book so people can get it. It is, again, Stay Afloat from that day to today. And Phil, where can they find that?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you can see it here, but there it is, Stay Afloat. You can find it at the philtourneypodcast.com if you want a signed copy, or it's on Amazon, other places. I do want to add one thing what Jeremy said about the Maddox. I went aboard the USS Maddox DD-731 after I re-enlisted in the Navy. And those men that were still there when that Gulf of Tonkin, quote unquote, happened, it never happened. They told me that. It was a bunch of BS. And that's what got 58,000 men plus killed on a false flag. And that is very, very sad. But thank you for letting me advertise my book. It's been an honor to be on with Wayne and Jeremy and what is it? Pizza Slice? Where's he at?
Well, we're going to bring him on. I got to say the closing words first. Okay. And just, I guess we're running out of time. Wayne Stiles has a very interesting life and also writes a lot of articles, and they really are fantastic. And where can they find your writing? Is it just
I've done 4 articles on Medium. I'm basically
Medium?
a lurker. I don't have a site, but medium.com has 4 of my articles. And I researched them pretty well. If you go to ussliberty.org, there's also a listing of books written by some of the survivors and relatives of the survivors, as well as Phil's books. So I encourage people to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. It's been, I don't know what else to say other than an honor and a privilege to meet you and for our audience to hear history, first person accounts. The opinions you hear are ours, not those of WBAI or the Pacifica Foundation. That wraps up our show for today. This is Uncontrolled Opposition. I'm Gloria Guillo, joined here by Professor Jeremy Kuzmarov. Remember to like and share our broadcast. Your kind support keeps us going. Please find us on Substack, Twitter X, and Podbeam. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next week. Okay, we are still live. Don't anybody take your pants off.
Yeah, really.
So this is an opportunity if you have any closing things that you didn't get a chance to say.
Okay, real quick. I think we're shy about 1 to 2 minutes. So if Jeremy, maybe you can give us some final thoughts that I can add into the end of the podcast.
Okay, you want me to say something?
Yeah, or if
I've
anybody
got-
has a final thought, they can.
I've
just
got
kind of
something
wrap
that
up.
I think people should know.
Yes, go ahead.
At the time, before, during, and after the attack, the U.S. Navy had a airplane overhead. It was full of NSA people. They were listening to every military and civilian communication in the area. They made tapes. They had 2 Hebrew speakers aboard. They made tapes of all of those conversations, including the pilots saying that the ship was American. Those tapes were classified top secret right away by NSA. And James Bamford was quick at the draw. He did a FOIA request and got a bunch of documents, and NSA tried to take him to court to classify the documents in arrears, and he won. So I'm telling you, there is a lot of evidence that's been covered up by the U.S. government that would prove that Israel knew perfectly well who we were.
I also read that there was an Israeli pilot who refused when he realized what he was told to do and that the ship was an American ship, refused to fire and was, I think, arrested when he got back to Israel. Does anyone want to speak on that?
Well, I heard the same thing, and they also said, you've got your target, hit it. And they said, but it's an American ship. You have your orders, hit the ship and hit it now, and which they did. They hit it savagely and quick. But yeah, there's so many pieces of this puzzle, but actually there's not. A child could put it together if they just look at it. It'd be like a 5-piece puzzle, and the main puzzle is the truth. And the USS Liberty survivors will go to our dying day. I know I will. Until this truth is told. America deserves it. The world deserves it. This was close to a nuclear war. That means something. People should know about that.
Absolutely, yeah, and the viewers should be clear that I think the false flag plan was to completely sink the ship and kill everybody, but the Israeli covers, because then it would be kept secret that Israel was the one that shot it down. Because the plan was to have people believe that Egypt was the one that was shooting and destroyed the ship, and that would outrage the public against Egypt. But yeah, I guess one of the mysteries is why the ship wasn't totally destroyed, and it may be because that Israeli pilot refused orders, or somebody got cold feet in Israel who didn't know the broader plan, because the the lower level soldiers are not going to know of the broader plan. They're just given an order to do something, and if they realized it was an American ship, they may have decided they didn't want to shoot it. So that may have been what happened, why it was a botched false.
I also read, and you guys jump in with the truth, that the Israelis really didn't think a nuclear, assault on Cairo was a good idea because Israel isn't that far away, and that the radiation can blow over. So, anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Yeah, it's not known yet again exactly why the ship wasn't fully destroyed, but that is a possibility that some people in Israel had second thoughts that if Americans started bombing Egypt or using nuclear weapons, a lot of Israelis could get killed, and it wouldn't actually benefit their broader agenda.
And nuclear fallout lasts. And it doesn't discriminate. Radiation, sickness, and poisoning is,
The most interesting thing in Peter Hunam's book that Jeremy mentioned, Operation Cyanide, is that he interviewed a U.S. Air Force B-52 pilot who was rousted out of his bed on June 8th, 1967, and he and several crews were on the runways with their planes running. They were loaded with nuclear weapons. They had sealed orders. And all of this happened before the Liberty was even attacked. And when you consider California's, close approximation to Russia, going over the Arctic route, you just wonder if they anticipated a Russian response, because Hunam actually went to Russia and interviewed a Russian general, then the Soviet Union, and the general told him if we had nuked Cairo, they were going to nuke Tel Aviv. And I think that, may have been transmitted to the U.S., and it may have had some input on the crazy scheme that they had come up with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And another important thing that I mentioned, I think I got from the Hunam book, was that there was a Russian ship that was attacked that day, and that aroused, because they're often like in these false flag incidents, they're often side attacks, and the motive is not clear, but it may have been just as part of this operation, and there was some suggestion that it was to divert from Vietnam, that Johnson was wanting to shift the theater of conflict away from Vietnam, which wasn't going well for the United States, and that somehow this Russian ship attack was was connected with the Liberty. But it's somewhat of a mystery exactly how they relate together, but it is very suspicious that occurred right around the same time of the USS Liberty attack.
Did I read that the Russians somehow helped some of the crew members, or is that something else?
No, that never happened.
Okay, thank you.
No, that never happened. But I might add, there were two submarines there, USS Amberjack and USS Andrew Jackson, filming the whole thing. They filmed this whole attack, and they've got it there. And Jeremy, as an investigative reporter, Frontlet 615. Remember that, Frontlet 615. If you can uncover that, it tells you the whole story of why and the what for of why this happened.
Wow.
Front left 615, is that what you said?
Frontlet 615.
Could you spell that?
FRONTLIT, Frontlet, LET, Frontlet 615. And it gives you everything. And I was told this by a secret CIA guy, and he's passed on now. He says, you uncover that, you uncover everything. And I believed him. This is passed on to several survivors. So that's what the whole deal was. I mean, this is so precise and worked out so well, except we didn't sink. That's the only thing that they're pissed off about, and they're still pissed off about, is we didn't sink.
That was heroic. It was heroic. that it didn't sink.
I can add for your viewers that since the event, Israel has put out a whole bunch of disinformation about the attack. And Phil is too good a guy to mention it, but the survivors, the families, people who talk about the Liberty have been labeled by Israel as racist and anti-Semitic. They conjured up a big kerfluffle last year around the anniversary, and there were some actual physical threats communicated to the participants in their 59th reunion, 58th reunion, sorry. And this small group of survivors and supporters had to spend $15,000 to hire additional security as well as servers for the hotel because the hotel workers would not come to work based on the threats that had been flying around Norfolk, Virginia. So that's the atmosphere that these guys have had to exist in since the event.
Wow.
No, nothing's
thank you.
changed. Nothing's changed.
Do you have any comments about the your meeting with Thomas Massey last week? I thought that was a very powerful moment for this story because it's the first time we've really seen any kind of mainstream news on this issue.
Yeah, it was a great deal. It went by. It happened so fast. We were going to leave on the 8th and go back home. Our reunion was over, but we got to Massey. I didn't, but Ray Dustar of Deep Shallow Dive and my son Bryce were conversing with Tom Massey, and he said, "Well, let's bring them all up here, get them all up here," which we did. We rented a big bus, got up there. He did that on the floor. We were in the gallery, and we clapped, and we got in trouble for that, for clapping. You're not supposed to do that. But then Tom Massey, after that, he took about 25 or maybe there's a few more, 25, 26, all out to dinner or lunch, and he paid for everything. You know, quite a guy. Hope he runs for president. Massey 2028 would be my preference, but he's a good man, and he's a patriot, and he loves his country dearly.
Thank you. Okay. Any closing words, or Jeremy, you have something there?
No, I think that's a good way to close it. Yeah, it's been a great discussion, and yeah, great to have people
Good.
who were there on the show. So, and to hear from them.
The only thing I would say is this should have happened right afterwards, not how many years later. How many years later is this now? Who's good in math?
Almost 60.
59.
Yeah.
59 years later, we finally get to be able to talk about this.
Yeah.
How about that,
Yeah.
guys?
No,
Well-
and I think the real heroic act is that you guys are speaking out about this after you were told that you were sworn to secrecy and
Yeah.
told you're not allowed to talk about it. And because our government is betraying its troops, the same troops they tell us we got to support the troops.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
you're an example of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only thing I have left to say is, thank you for having me on, and Wayne and everybody else. Jeremy, I was glad to meet you all. And you, piece of man, I enjoyed meeting you the most. But I guess the
It's
last
cheese
word.
slice. Cheese slice.
Oh, cheese. Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to leave you with is, I think it's only appropriate, is shalom. We'll see you again.
Definitely.
All right.
And peace. Yeah, we want peace.
We want
Definitely.
peace. God
Thank
bless
you.
you
Yeah,
guys.
we'll get a piece
Okay.
of slice. Right. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and thank Craig Poster Jardula. He's the executive producer of Uncontrolled Opposition, and he gives us assistance in being able to put the show on the air. Thanks to Phil, thanks to Wayne, thanks to Jeremy, thanks to Gloria, and thanks to you, to the viewers who are watching this. I want to thank Truthwire, who is also hosting the show today. So if you're watching us over there, I hope you'll follow Pasta to Go and follow Uncontrolled Opposition over on his channel. We do this every week live at 11 a.m. on Eastern time. So with that, I think we're going to be done for the day. We're going to get out of here, and I want everybody to have a great weekend. So we'll be back with another episode next week. Next week will be our 52nd episode, which means we'll be doing Uncontrolled Opposition for an entire year. Although we were doing Left on Left before that, but for an entire year of Uncontrolled Opposition, that's a pretty cool milestone to hit. So be back with us next week for that. And you guys want to say goodbye? I think that's it. We're going to get out of here.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Great to meet you, Wayne. Take care.
Yeah, great to
Same
meet
here.
you. It was a real pleasure for you to come on the show. I'm glad we get to hear your story. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll be back, and we'll see you next week, too. Bye-bye.